So guys, welcome back, and today we are going to start with Annex 6. So MARPOL Annex 6 is for the regulation for the prevention of air pollution from ships. And all MARPOL annexes, they have a ratification process, and after that it entered into force on 19th May 2005. It's the latest. So what are the gases which are responsible for air pollution and related to MARPOL Annex 6? Oxides of nitrogen, NOx, sulfur oxides, SOX, carbon dioxide, CO2, carbon monoxide, CO, hydrocarbons, their gas, soot, and some particulates. The concentration of different exhaust gases is variable according to engine type, engine settings, and fuel types. So as per that engine, RPM and all, and type of engine, we will see different requirements. So as per IMO, these are the SECA areas or special areas of Annex 6 for SOX and NOx. So there are different areas. So we have first the SECA areas, which are sulfur emission control areas, Baltic Sea, then North Sea, English Sea, and then European waters, Northwest European waters, and then you have Californian waters, California sources. There is a special regulation and circular regarding that. And there are different fuel specifications also for that area because of many whales and other aquatic organisms. So because these Californian waters are very sensitive waters, they have decided that within the 24 nautical miles of Californian baseline, they will control the emissions from engines and alternative power sources they will work on, and all the greenhouse gases they will apply very stringent limitations. Now let's see about the application. The MARPOL Annex 6 applies to all ships, and there is a certificate also, EIA-PPP, emission control, that we will see. So certification requirements are depending on the size of vessel, but control is applied for all the ships. Then ships of 400 GRT and above engaged in international voyages, they need to have, if from the ratified countries or flying the flag of ratified countries, they need to have a IAPP certificate, International Air Pollution Prevention Certificate, as per Annex 6. And this IAPP certificate will be issued of like all harmonized system of survey by flag state and class on behalf of flag state. And validity will be 5 years, and annual verification will be there. Now there is one more certificate required as per Annex 6, EIA-PPP. EIA-PPP, that is Indian International Air Pollution Prevention Certificate. That is required for different types of engine as described later on, that regarding to the NOx emission. So NOx emission is dependent on your engine RPM and design, and SOx emission is dependent on your fuel emissions. So for fuel emissions and all, we have IAPP certificate, and for NOx, we have EIAPP certificate. And Annex 6 requires that every ship of 400 GRT and above, and even for use for fixed and floating drilling objects, they are subject to the initial and other harmonized system of surveys, periodical surveys, and 5-yearly renewal surveys. Then minimum of one intermediate survey during the period of validity. So same harmonized system of survey is applicable. And in the case of ships of less than 400 GRT, the administration has different requirements. So these are your main regulations in Annex 6 of MARPOL, which we have, which are concerning to us. First is Regulation 12, that is emissions from ozone depleting substances, like you have from refrigerant plants, AC, and some firefighting equipments. Then Regulation 13 is talking about your NOx and emissions, so NOx emissions from diesel engines, that we will see. Then Regulation 14 is talking about sulfur oxides emissions from ships. SOX emissions. Regulation 15 is volatile organic compounds emission from cargo oil tanks of oil tankers. That is talking about vapor emission control system that we were saying is also required by Annex 6 Regulation 15. Then Regulation 16 is emissions from shipboard incinerators, which are causing some emissions from incinerations. Then Regulation 18 is fuel oil capacity, your bunker oil samples and all. Then MARPOL Annex 6, and there is a technical code for MARPOL Annex 6, which has some requirements as per the following about your ozone depleting substances from refrigerant plants and firefighting equipment. So the first requirement is that all ozone depleting substances are prohibited on ship from 2005. And if you find some substance which is emitting any ozone depleting substances, then you have to remove them to reception facilities as soon as possible. Then from 1st January 2020, no installation is permitted on ship which contain HCFCs, hydrofluorochlorocarbons, which are oxygen depleting substances. For example, refrigerants in AC like Freon 22, these are ozone depleting substances and they are banned. Then on board ship, we have to maintain a record book which contains a list of ozone depleting substances, and like use of freon and other these things are banned, and its list has to be maintained. If there are any, like halon is not approved or prohibited to use in fire extinguishing system. So these rules and regulations should always be complied. So next is regulation 13 about NOx emissions from diesel engines. So first we will see that to which ships these NOx emissions apply. So it applies to diesel engines. First is if your engine has more than 130 kilowatt horse power, then and it is constructed after 1st January 2000. Then, or if it is more than 130 kilowatt power and it is gone under major conversion after 1st January 2000, either it is installed after January 2000 or it undergoes any major conversion after January 2000, then you need to comply with NOx emission regulations. And also if your engine is more than 5000 kilowatt power and displacement per cylinder or at or above 90 liters, which is installed on a ship after January 1990 and prior to January 2000. So these are the application requirements. Then which ships it does not apply to. So it does not apply to engines which are used for emergency, like lifeboat engine or your emergency generator, and also which are solely used for like exploration, your seismic surveys or exploitation or offshore platforms of seabed minerals, resources and all. These places, this NOx technical code is not applicable because they are used for emergency only. Then let's see the requirements for your NOx emissions. So it is a 3-tier approach, which is dependent on different constructions of ship in different years. So if your ship is constructed between 2000 to January 2011, and depending on the RPM of your ship, if your ship's RPM is less than 130, then you can emit 17 gram per kilowatt of your NOx, depending on the kilowatt size of the ship, of the engine. And if your RPM is between 130 and 2000, then 45 into n to the power minus 0.2, this much grams per kilowatt hour of NOx you can emit. And if it is more than 2000 RPM, then you can emit 9.8 grams per kilowatt hour of your engine. Then next is tier 2. If your ship is constructed between January 11 or after January 11, then your emissions, if again depending on the RPM, if the RPM is less than 130, then you can you have to reduce your NOx emissions to 14.4 grams per kilowatt hour. And if it is between 130 to 2000, then 44 into n to the power minus 0.23. So you can see it's slowly reducing. then 7.7 grams per kilowatt hour if your RPM is more than 2000. Now tier 3 is if your ship is constructed after 1st January 2006, then you have additional limitations, especially in your emission control areas. So if your ship is operating in NOx emission control areas, the allowable emissions are, if the RPM is less than 130, you can see it's going from 14.4 to 3.4 grams per kilowatt hour. So this is the most reduction, vast, drastic reduction. And for this, many ships were not equipped, so they had to install some scrubbers or this exhaust gas cleaning system, recirculation system, so many things to get NOx emission in control. So for ships constructed after January 2016 and RPM less than 130, 3.4 grams per kilowatt hour, because most of the ships, the merchant navy ships, the RPM is less than 130. Then if it is between 130 to 2000, 9.0 into n to the power minus 0.2 grams per kilowatt hour. And if it is more than 2000, 2 grams per kilowatt hour. So here also you can see from 44 it's directly coming to 9. So quite a drastic change is there. Then we need to also know what are the factors which are affecting the amount of nitrogen oxides which are coming out of your engine. So your fuel injection timing will control the amount of nitrogen oxides, NOx coming out of the system. Injection system components, your nozzle or injectors, the fuel pumps, then your software, which is controlling your engine and fuel injections, or the hardwares, that is your fuel injection control. Then your camshaft components, inlet and exhaust cam, then valve timings, how much timing the exhaust valves are closing and opening, combustion chambers inside your cylinders, piston, cylinder head, and cylinder liners. How are they? What is the compression ratio? How much the connecting rod, piston rod, and SHIM gaskets they are getting moving, and timings and all, and how much is the friction. Then turbocharger, what type it is and build, what type of air cooler is there or preheater is there, your auxiliary blower design, then what are the water injection NOx reducing equipments you are using, then emulsified fuel, what is your fuel water emulsion ratio, NOx reducing equipment for exhaust gas recirculation, are you using exhaust gas recirculation or not, because obviously exhaust gas recirculation will reduce your NOx equipment, NOx emissions. And there is a two types of either you have exhaust gas recirculation or you have selective catalytic reduction, where some elements are added in the exhaust system that we will see. And you need to have a NOx technical file which has to be maintained on the ship for any engine. So actual technical file of any engine may include less components and or parameters other than the list above, depending on the particular engine and the specific. So you need to have a ship specific NOx technical file. So we already saw what are the various things which are affecting our NOx emission, and same things mostly we have to control our NOx emissions. So for all old ships, we can introduce new injectors, fuel injectors, which are controlling NOx emissions, then retarding the injection timing of the fuel, then temperature control of your charging air, exhaust gas recirculation as we saw, or our selective catalytic reduction, then fuel water emulsion or water injection system we can use, then humid air motor technique where we are adding some wet steam to the engine. These are for mostly existing engines. Then for new engines, of course, they have to be pre-certified that they will emit so much of less NOx as per the regulations. We need to have a NOx technical file for clarification of the engines and their groups and the final certification. And as per regulation 13, requirements are fully defined by NOx technical code. So there is a special NOx technical code which is attachment to the MARPOL, because there are a lot of special clarifications and requirements for the engines to reduce NOx emissions, and there are recommended readings for each type and RPM of design of the engines by different groups. And the certification of engine as per the manufacturer should be checked before installing them and all the settings. And the ship should have, of course, EIAPP and IAPP. Then PSC also have to do inspections like your verification and compliance, and all these measures they have to check as per the NOx technical file and NOx technical code. Then we have regulation 14, which is talking about your SOX emissions from ships. Same, it came with this Annex 6 2005, and it's related to two things, either SOX and the particulate matter which is emitting from your ship's engines, and it will be controlled by the sulfur content in the fuel. So these are the limits of your fuel which can emit what amount of sulfur oxides in different areas. There are special areas of Annex 6 sulfur emission control areas. So if you are outside sulfur emission control areas, before January 2012, we could emit 4.5% mass by mass of sulfur. And from January 2012 to 2020 till now, we could emit 3.5%. This is also a 3-tier method. So every 5-10 years, we are changing. And then after January 2020, from this year, 0.5% mass by mass we can use emit sulfur outside SECA areas. Now inside SECA areas, previously it was 1.5 till 2010, and then from 2010 to 2015 it's 1%, and now it's only 0.1% mass by mass sulfur you can emit from engine exhaust or type of fuel you are using, or either you are putting scrubbers nowadays. So scrubbers are being installed, tanks, fuel oil tanks are being getting cleaned to change over from VLSFO, from low sulfur and diesel oil, to VLSFO and ULSFO, very large, very low sulfur oils and ultra large low sulfur oils. Then these are the SECA areas, sulfur emission control areas: the Baltic Sea, North Sea, North American area, Northwest European waters, and United States Caribbean Sea. And slowly all the NOx emission control areas also will be same as your SECA areas. So this is the diagram you can see. This is your North Sea, Baltic Sea, then your Northwest European waters, Mediterranean. Now, since we saw that we have different requirements for SECA areas fuel oil and outside SECA areas fuel oil. So if you are in special area, if you are operating outside special area, you will have, suppose in 2020, 0.5% M by M fuel oil. So when you are going into SECA area like North Sea, you have to change over from 0.5% sulfur fuel oil to ultra large, that is 0.1% fuel oil content of sulfur. So then you need to change over the fuel oil, and as per your ship design and equipment, it will take long time. So before you enter into the ECA area, you need the changeover should complete, and you need to have logged down all the details when and how you started your changeover, and entry into ECA area and your changeover completion time. Similarly, when you are coming out of ECA area, again the changeover can start only when you are outside ECA area, and all the records have to be maintained in the logbook, or if as per flag state requirement, or oil record book. So what are the different arrangements are provided for SOX control? So we are doing following things for controlling the sulfur emissions. We have different fuel oils and different tanks with different fuel oils, different ports, having different oils. And changing over might take from 12 to 24 hours. And depending on the type of ship. Then for cylinder oil also we have two qualities of oils. Then we need to have a thorough sampling whenever we are doing changeover. Need to keep the samples and get in check, proper documentation and logging down all the procedures. So these are the different designs for handling different fuels with different service and settling tanks. Then there are some other methods of controlling NOx and SOx, like we have exhaust gas cleaning system or other systems. Then we have plants, reliquation plant for LNG and LPG carriers, where we are controlling NOx and SOx by using LNG in the fuel. Alpha lubricator system, electronic control engines, turbo generator plant, where a high efficiency of air flows for power takeoff and reduces the fuel and emission reduction is there. In system integration, as we saw, humid air motor where steam is passed in the wet steam is passed in the engine. Engine intake air operating with water and exhaust gas recirculation, 50% reduction of emission. Then HFO sulfur content of the fuel oil, low sulfur fuel oils are used, and dual fuel options are there in the ships for SECA areas. Then also, as you know, many ships are installing scrubbers because some engines are not ready to use this very low sulfur fuel oil. It's very thin and many pipelines are leaking or the engine is not equipped to use this type of fuel. So they are installing scrubbers so that the regulations of sulfur cap are complied. So these exhaust gases pass through the scrubber and the sulfur as per the requirement is reduced. And last is about your volatile organic compound emissions from cargo oil tanks, which is a separate chapter in video, which we will see separately. Then today's this video's last main point is that next points will cover separate video. So regulation 18 is about fuel oil quality, which is controlled by, you should have a bunker delivery note from the supplier, then you should have samples, and you have to retain the bunker delivery note and the samples for 3 years. And there is a special requirements for bunker samples, the size of bottle and everything, how the inspection start to, you have to obtain MSDS every time from the supplier, the latest specifications of the fuel, sulfur content, and with all the ship's details of name and all, date of delivery, fuel, sulfur content, product name, intensity and all, and declaration that the fuel supplied meets the regulation as per MARPOL. Then these are the fuel sampling requirements. There is sealed sampling is required as per the guidelines, and PDN has to be there. Then you need to put a proper label, where was the sample taken, bunkering done, size of sample is 400 ml, and sample has to be retained for at least 1 year. And port state and all have to do the inspections. So guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, and we will keep continuing with this more videos regarding NOx technical file and other details of NX6. Thank you.